Yeah! Dun, 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 dun. Huh. Bum, bum, bum. Funky fantasy. Dum, dun, 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 dun. The bull. Dum, dum, dum. Stratozeros. Dun, 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 dun. Bum, bum, ba, dum, bum. It's the War of Nerds. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to the War of Nerds podcast. Your bearded nerdy hosts are here, and we're just as wonderful to look at as always. Ha ha. But we have a fun episode tonight for y'all. Going to be talking about plot holes in general as a whole. Big circle, like a plot hole.
Haha.
Anyways, pun intended. That was totally unscripted. I'm very proud of myself right now, but we are going to start off by giving y'all some updates on this year, 2024. So we're going to start off talking about where our book series are at and then conventions we're going to be at. We won't be talking about it for too long, but just some little minor updates, and then we'll move on to the content. So if one of y'all would like to start off, freaking let us know what's up with your stuff.
You want to go first, Alfred?
Sure.
All right.
I am finishing edits on The Water Crystal Evil in Men, which is book three in my series, as well as a young adult series called Dream Tale. Both of those I'm going to launch a Kickstarter in March of next year, so keep an eye out for those. I will be at TBR Con with Nathan in the end of September, so it may be coming up as you're watching this video. And then I will be at Next Chapter Con in the beginning of October. Hopefully, I will be accepted into Chattanooga Comic Con, but currently I'm on a wait list. So we'll see. I will have an update as that gets closer.
Fingers
Sounds like
crossed.
good. I am absolutely hoping to start hitting some conventions probably next year, but I do have book one and two out this year. One came out in January, two came out in May, and I am editing book three and writing book four right now. Book four is almost
Whoop,
finished.
whoop.
I'm hoping to put book three out late this year. But we'll see how the editing process goes. But I was hoping to get three books out this year. That's my goal, and I'm on par for it right now. And then really start trying to hit some events and I don't know, get out there, get people to read it and see if they like it. So I've gotten fantastic feedback, but I'm ready to like meet some people that have no connection to me whatsoever and get some feedback from those readers and start to build my readership some more. So that's my goal for this year.
100%. That's fantastic. And for all you nerdy listeners, it is a hope of us that in 2025, all three of us will be at a convention together. So not only if you want to just see your wonderful bearded nerdy hosts, you
Mhm.
can see us all together, or you can just see us because we're there and we have our books and chat with us about really anything. So that's the hope for next year. I think we were looking at one in Wisconsin or one in Tennessee or something. I think that's what our plan for next year is. So that's 2025. But for me, for 2024, earlier this year, just a couple months ago, was Dallas, Texas AuthorCon. And I'm just going to say it went great because when you see this episode, it's already happened. But right now, it hasn't happened. So good fortunes, reverse psychology, who knows? But, anyways, the cons to come is like Alfred said, TBR Knoxville in September 3rd, I believe. September 3rd and the 4th, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So come
That
see
weekend.
the funky fantasy man and the bull because we're going to be there and we're going to be having a great time. And we got the beards. So, I'm just saying. As for book stuff goes, I'm in the same boat as Ryan. I'll have three books coming out this year. Um, my book one re-release came out. The second edition came out May 31st. Book two came out and is coming out in September. And then book three should be coming out right around December 1st. So luckily I already have them all written. So with book two, it was just a matter of just adding a couple extra chapters, going through and just doing a revamp on the editing and redoing the audiobooks. Yay! Because that's not a process at all. But I
No.
still love it. And then book three, sorry, Book one, Kingdom Society, The Black Hood. Book two is Broken Reality, and book three is Rise of the Shadow Knight. And that one gets dark. So if you like dark fantasy, it's got some elements of dark fantasy in it. And then book four, my last three books of the series will be coming out in 2025. So pretty excited. Well, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be that optimistic. Book four and five will definitely, hopefully be, you know what? TBD. Okay. So, but book four is The Path of Annihilation. Book five is The Dragon Games. And book six is The Promised Land. And that is the series and that a bunch of companion novels that I'm going to be putting out, a Xylox spinoff series, Future Kingdoms, Dawn of Magic. I've got freaking stuff for days to do. So, yeah, that's my book update. Freaking can't really think of anything else. Um, oh, I actually can. If all goes well this year, I will be putting out book one of the Guardians of Zyderia, the epic dark fantasy, at the end of the year this year.
Sweet.
If
Very
all
cool.
goes well, I'm about a quarter of the way done with the first book in that series. So either the end of this year or spring of 2025. So I'm going to start dual series ins series ins. That's yeah, that's not words. But anyways, you know how it be. So we're writers, but it doesn't mean we can speak in real life, um,
No,
at all.
we're writers
Like,
and podcasters, and we can't speak. So
and
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
narrator and I can't speak. Like, it's like no. But those are our general updates for book stuff. And now we're going to get into the juicy content of, wait for it, plot holes.
so I got a question for you, kind of tying in with us all being authors and us having our own books. Um,
Yeah.
First of all, how would we define a plot hole as
Ooh.
authors? Like, what do we see as a plot hole?
A hole that's dug from ignoring parts of the book, whether it's because it got pushed to your subconscious because you were focused on one thing or another, or you're writing, you got your A, B, you're C, and your D, and in between, somewhere along the way, a little gap started, and it either got larger or it got smaller because you've got major plot holes and
Mhm.
you've got minor plot holes. Like, as I would say, anime is very minor plot hole territory, whereas, like, you know,
Some of
major
the stuff
plot
that we talk
holes.
about.
Yeah, exactly. So I think
uh,
plot holes, yeah, that's really,
I
yeah.
was going to say that plot holes for me are when the story breaks its own rules or logic uh, for plot's sake. So
Mhm.
kind of taking it in like you have the plot and you create a hole in the plot because you want the plot to go somewhere. So it's kind of disjointed. It's not as connected as you want it to be. And that's where the plot hole is because you needed to go somewhere. So you kind of forgot or ignored your rules in order to get the plot where you wanted it. Have we said plot enough this episode? I don't know.
No, I think we're gonna hit it a few more times. Uh,
Dan, redundancy.
Well, speaking of redundancy, I think the key word for plot holes is inconsistencies. And I think that goes along with both of what you guys said there with if you're missing those connections or you have a lot of setup, and then when you get to the end of your book and you're just like, oh, I got to wrap this up, and you kind of like throw away all of your connections that you should have built off of, and you kind of write something new, or your magic system if you're writing fantasy is one of the biggest ones to throw you for a loop. You have hard set rules and then you get to a battle where you can't win it and you choose to break one of your rules just to tie everything together. I think that's one of the easiest places like writers will fall into their own plot holes. Um,
Yeah.
but kind of tying off of that, have you guys ever had feedback from some of your ARC readers or people about your own work where you've had to fix a plot hole in the past, or have you guys been lucky enough to avoid those?
I haven't had a reader feedback about plot holes, but
Mm,
that's not to say there haven't been or there aren't. I just haven't been told yet. And that may be because anytime I see something, I'm like, no, I can't, nope. And I'll sit there and I'll fill that hole in. If it takes me 2 months to fill that hole in, I'll do that. Uh,
absolutely.
but I mean, there could still be. I don't know.
So it's interesting because for me, I don't know if I really run into plot holes per se because I mean I know my plot pretty well through and through. I think it's a matter of something that I forgot I already talked about something and I talk about it again. So I
Mm,
kind of like over enunciate about something
that
like
redundancy.
yeah, redundancy. So I think redundancy is more of what I struggle with. Forgetting um like plot elements, no, it's just that I forgot that I wrote it and I do it again. But I'm always connecting the strings. I suppose that could lead to a plot hole, though I haven't had anybody really tell me yet that there's plot holes or that they're wondering. They're just kind of wondering why I write certain things.
Mm.
I'm like, believe me, this is laying the groundwork. These are strings that are going to weave for plot twists or for reveals or things in the lore that happen later on. So actually, I'm kind of surprised I can remember half of the crap that I write to touch on later on, truth be told. But my ADHD brain just does it somehow. So for me, it's more that I repeat myself too much, I think, sometimes. So it's more of a fact of going back and making sure, okay, when are the appropriate times to talk about this? When can I get rid of it? Because you only need to beat people over the head a certain amount of times before. Like, Harry Potter was a boy of 11 from Fall Privet Drive. He then killed Vernon and Aunt Petunia. Like, each book. Harry Potter, a boy of 12 with a lightning scar. Really? He has a lightning scar? Oh my gosh, gee whiz. Uh,
what
So
um,
I don't
about you,
think,
Ryan?
well, I was gonna say I don't have a lot of readers, so no one's pointed anything out to me. But in my editing process, the one thing that I tend to get tripped up on is like character related plot holes, where I build a character to be a certain type, and then later on down the road, I might have them doing something that's very out of character. And when I go back and reread that editing, and I'm like, okay, whoa, this is why are they doing this? This isn't their character. And it's not they went out and they were like, no, this is what that character would do. I was spacing out writing this chapter, and that character is not the same person. So having to go back and kind of like polish that stuff is where I've caught a lot of mine. But I kind of think, and this is could be like a uh I don't know, I'm missing the word here, but I think plot holes are almost a badge of honor. If you have enough people viewing your work, some of these movies are like award-winning movies that have plot holes or award-winning books that have plot holes, but people are so obsessed with the franchise that they're almost like, "Oh, we got to take it down a peg by finding the inconsistencies, however absurd or small or big they may be." So I think the more you get your work out there and the bigger audience you get, you're going to find plot holes, even if it's something you accept as like, no, I don't see that as a plot hole as the writer. I see it as it was necessity for this plot to move forward. And maybe it
yeah.
didn't connect what this reader thinks it should have. But I do think at some point writers accept certain things they've done, whereas the readers view it in a different light. So,
I like that.
it's it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine talking about I was a little bit disappointed because I was like, oh man, I got, a couple negative reviews or blah blah blah. Not really negative, just that was that person's opinion and everybody's opinions are different. But for me, I see it, I'm just like, well, I don't that doesn't make sense to me because everybody's brains work differently.
mhm.
But my friend reminded me, he's like, you're gonna get a lot more feedback and a lot more criticisms because you're going to have more eyes on your work
Mhm.
because you improved it. And so the more people you have reading it, the more opinions that you're going to have, where somebody's going to be like, well, this was too fast paced or this was too slow paced. You know, people who like Brandon Sanderson's work probably wouldn't really dig a Timothy Zahn book or a maybe J.K. Rowling, but I mean Harry Potter moves decently quickly for most of the books. Decently quickly. I don't know if that was proper grammar. Oh well, I don't have pro writing aid here to guide me
We've
along the way.
already established we can't talk anyways, so.
Plot holes. Anyways, so and there's definitely gonna be some memes falling in this episode.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we take Star Wars for example, right? And I don't know if it's really plot hole territory, but I mean the whole midichlorians thing, it's just like that was a total plot hole that I don't know if Lucas really was thinking about what it could turn into when he talked about midichlorian count so high that Master Yoda puked. Like, well, midichlorians, you know what I mean? So,
You kind
it's
of get the same
dialogue.
thing with anime with like DBZ. They kind of went away from the power level stuff because it you get inconsistent. Like, well, his power level was this, so how come it's this now? And what was his power level? If and it gets to the
Mm.
point where you're like, I can't compare anymore. Something's missing here, and it could be from just like it was a cool idea. I'm gonna throw out power levels until they start mattering, and now it's ooh, what did I do?
It's like the Team Four Star thing, like Vegeta. Power levels are bullshit. Like, and it's like because it was the whole thing with Toriyama and power levels. Like from the beginning of DBZ, Raditz just is like, "Oh, what's your power level, human? Oh, haha, higher power level. It's Piccolo. Oh yeah, what do you do? Oh, Vegeta, you people are so ridiculous. I'm gonna be a baby on my face. I'm done. Giving back to Lord Frieza's place. Power levels suck." So the whole power level thing, we go from like Super Saiyan 1 all the way up to like Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct and Super Saiyan Ultra Ego and all this stuff that happened in Super. So it's just like for DBZ, I don't really know if it was necessary. I just remembered one. God, my brain is just all over the place. But One Piece, I was having this conversation with my friend, and we're both One Piece fanatics. And when Ichiro Oda was talking about hockey, didn't become a big thing until after the 2 year gap. So Luffy and everybody come back from Marineford, and all of a sudden you find out that armament hockey actually like covers, you can see it on your arm, where like you're watching Water 7 with like Rob Lucci and like the whole finger pistol thing, or like defensive armament hockey, but you don't see anything. They talk about like Matra from like Skypiea and stuff. So I don't know if Oda really was thinking about what hockey was at the time with like Skypiea and stuff. That was a later development that I think could have been a huge plot hole, but he kind of rectified it, I think, in a way. By here, we're talking about hockey with Dark King Rayleigh, and then you go back and you see Skypiea, and he's just like, yeah, Skypiea calls it this. So you're able to save yourself because you had a certain thing that was similar earlier, and you can tie those things together. It's just you can't change it again. So I think in anime, it's more of the minor plot hole territory, unless you're in like Naruto and like DBZ, and those are just like riddled with like minor plot holes and really not even major, not even the DBZ, honestly.
Well, I think
Um,
it's more the genre of anime allows it to be a little bit more on the absurd, and we've talked about this before when we've talked about anime because you look at like the Frieza saga, he can destroy an entire planet, but then we have how many villains afterwards that are stronger than Frieza, and at what point did they not just start with blowing up a planet? Like if everyone's stronger than Frieza, why are you just not starting at that point and moving on? But no, you scale them down and you have them have a fight one on one as opposed to what it could be because they're obviously all getting infinitely stronger than each other. So I mean, it's riddled with actual plot holes, but it's something we more accept because of the genre it's in,
yeah,
where we let it be because of what it is, as opposed it doesn't all have to be as consistent in that
I was
cinema.
along those lines. I was thinking of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The different elements, like you get to a certain point, and waterbenders can mold blood. They can
Hmm.
control your blood. Allegedly, it's only on the full moon of certain days or whatnot, but they become the most powerful force of all in that time span. Airbenders could literally suck the air away from you, and you could
Hmm.
suffocate. Like there's a lot of things that show like earthbenders could move it out from under your feet to the point where you can't sink yourself and stand properly. But the argument I would think is that it's based off of martial arts, and there's a code to martial arts. So while it's based in a fantasy world where there's war going on and there really is no fair fight, uh, or no such thing as a fair fight, based in that world, each person has a code that they go by because of the martial art aspect of it. So I think that too is a plot is what a plot hole or why plot holes come about because someone doesn't see the logic that's supposed to be built into that world too. It may not
Hmm.
actually be on the writer who messed up. It could be the reader or the viewer who doesn't understand the logic that the creator built. So they're like, no, I don't understand why they couldn't just fly on the Eagles to Mordor. That makes more sense than anything. But in the story, if you read the story and you understand the story, it does make sense why they didn't do, which we can talk about more later.
No, I think it's like with the whole Lord Frieza thing. Like Frieza is probably consistently the most OP villain in
Hmm.
all of Dragon Ball. I mean, even far surpassing Buu. Yeah, the argument about Buu being more powerful than Frieza. No, Buu was more unstable than Frieza, but his raw power, Frieza was the strongest villain that Dragon Ball ever saw.
When he comes back. But at his
Yeah, Golden.
current level during the Frieza
Yes.
saga, way below what came after him, would be like
Well,
my interpretation. But
Even
yes,
Cell
I mean,
Juniors were
yeah,
more
yeah.
powerful than him
it's a
at that time.
fact because like Goku's only using Super Saiyan 1 and he literally curb stomped Frieza.
Mm.
Like and then we're at Dragon Ball Super, Goku's at like Ultra Instinct and here's Golden Frieza literally able to almost he probably almost could have beaten Goku. Now
Mm.
we'll never really know because Frieza was actually on their team for Super, but we know for a fact that without Android 17, without Frieza and without Vegeta, they would have lost because Goku was not the most powerful fighter at the Tournament of Power. Goku's not even the strongest Saiyan. It's been told through the lore that Gohan's the most powerful Saiyan. He just stopped training and became you know, a father and a goofy little nerdy Gohan. That's, what he is. But with Frieza and Cell, like Cell's really powerful. But again, that's the thing with writing too. I have to watch myself. I'm like, okay, I'm writing this villain. He's doing all these crazy things, but he's not the final villain. The final villain's going to be able to do everything that all the previous villains could do. It's like Thanos in the MCU, right? With the Infinity Gauntlets. You see all the individual stones throughout phases 1 through 3 and what they can do. You're like, holy crap, that's powerful. But then you see the entire Infinity Gauntlet all together and you're like, oh, I see.
Yep.
I see how that works when it's all together. So I think I think there's certain times where plot holes are okay,
Hmm.
but I think it's understanding how to use those to the story's advantage. And if you're writing in a genre or an atmosphere where people are expecting that type of flavor.
Hmm.
And it's like Ryan brought up with anime, we expect things that are absurd and that don't make sense and that are unbelievable because that's what anime is. It's insane.
One of the biggest ones that launched a prequel movie is Star Wars, the original movie, Episode 4, with the Death Star. Now, I have since researched and looked at a bunch of different things online, and one person brought up something that I remember when I first watched it. Like, that didn't scream plot hole to me when I first watched it, and the numerous times I watched it after that, because it's built in the story that you've got the Empire that are cocky. They think that no one can defeat them. They've got Darth Sidious, they have Darth Vader. They are an ultra power with a machine that can destroy planets. And
Yeah.
this vent system that they have, yes, it's a fatal flaw, but none of them ever thought that you could get to it. They had pilots hundreds of thousands, you would assume, of stormtroopers flying the their planes and then or spacecraft and then turrets lining everywhere around where that thing is. So it wasn't like they weren't aware of it. They built things around it to mitigate any issue. And then it took Luke using the Force in a world where Jedi were thought to be extinct to even make the shot because everyone who tried prior couldn't do it. So
Yeah,
while so many people watch Star Wars, eventually you got people who are like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would they do that? I mean, it happens all the time in building. Like, well, we have to do certain things to make it work, and it makes sense within the story. It's only when you start nitpicking that you're like, wait a minute, that's a fatal. How did that happen? Uh, so that's one, and then Rogue One was the prequel I was talking about, where they tried to explain why it was, which I know a lot of people like, myself including, that it was a sabotage idea, but I don't think it was necessary. I think it could have stood on its own as well. But that's my opinion.
use use the Force, Luke. Your father was a great Jedi. I fought with him during the Clone Wars. What I'm going to tell you, though, is when you're flying your X-Wing starfighter, you're going to have to use Force. Don't you mean the Force, old Ben? No, use Force. Here's an AK-47.
But even still, it was like they failed if Luke couldn't use the Force to shoot the torpedoes.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. How many Red Red 5 failed, all the other pilots failed, like Luke's
Leader, they were all.
co-pilot from the Battle of Hoth failed, like
Mhm.
like all these people fail. They're like, I missed it. I can't get it. It's up to you, Luke. You got to do this. So he's focusing. I mean, Luke's a great pilot, sure. He's not to the level of Anakin or Han Solo, but he's still a phenomenal pilot. And Jedi were, most of them were taken out in Order 66. And at this point in Star Wars, we didn't know how many actually survived. Kanan Jarrus, Ezra Bridger, et cetera, because that's all talked about later on. So here's Luke and his X-Wing hearing old Ben's voice. He's like, use the Force, focus, close your eyes, turn off your scope and your equipment and just use the Force. And so he did. And I mean, that's the biggest plot hole in all of Star Wars, if you think about it, is the Death Star and how it was able to be destroyed with as simple as just Luke, basically no training, able to destroy the Death Star because he can magically force it in with the Force, which we don't even really understand at this point. So,
Yeah.
And to take that one step further, you go from A New Hope, where he has to shoot it through what, a 2 meter hole, to
Mhm.
um
the
oh my
Womp
God.
Rap joke.
Yeah, but six is, oh my God, why am I blanking? Return of,
Return
Return
of
of
the
the Jedi.
Jedi.
And yeah.
yes, sorry. Where they're flying inside of the Death Star to shoot the center. Like the entire ships fit inside the structure to blow it up at that point. So you're going from a 2 meter hole to be able to hit the core to actually flying inside of the structure of the Death Star to be able to blow it up and escape in time from that explosion.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if Lucas didn't do that in Phantom Menace on purpose because of all the talk about flying through the Death Star and all that stuff. So here's little Anakin and his little old school freaking Republic cruiser, and he's going into the actual Trade Federation cruiser, and they blow it up from the inside. He's
Maybe.
like, now this is pod racing. Like, it's like, yeah, it is. Except, anyways, but everything has plot holes. The question is, does it bother you
Hmm.
or does it not bother you? If we've talked about this before, if you can't, for something you love, if you can't understand and appreciate the flaws and the good parts, then because nothing's perfect.
Yep.
Everything is flawed, everything's imperfect. It's all subjective. Do you enjoy it? Yes. Do you not enjoy it? Okay, no problem. So that brings me to my question for you guys is in books that you've read, what is one book that you've read or a series that you've read that had just the biggest massive what the actual Stormfather plot hole that it either A bothered you and you couldn't get past it, or B, it bothered you but you could get past it, or C, you didn't care because you enjoyed the story that much?
I can't really think of one off the top of my head. I think that kind of speaks to my answer in general. So if I'm reading a book and I can trust the author and accept the story for what it is, I'll just accept anything that comes at me and read it as is. Books that I
Yeah.
tend not to like, or I can't finish, or I just don't enjoy, I notice them a lot more. Like, this is inconsistent. I don't like this. Why is this happening? I am thinking of one book. I'm not going to mention it on here, uh, but I have reviewed it in the past and I gave it 3 stars. But I'm not going to mention what book that is. But I didn't. I noticed so many inconsistencies, like the characters flip flop, they changed for whatever the plot called for. Kind of like you were talking about, Ryan, when you catch something and you're like, it's not what that character would do, but where you fixed yours, this other author did not, and it was glaring for me at the time.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't. I mean, I finished the book, but I was like, this that kind of stuff stands out to me. So if I can't trust the author or I don't enjoy the story, they stand out more.
I mean,
Otherwise, if I enjoy it, I glaze over it and have no problem.
think anybody who knows the Bull, anybody who knows Alfred Muller, if he says he gave a book a 3 stars, that's unheard of for Alfred.
Mhm.
So yeah, well, I'm going to be drilling you later to find out what said book was.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
but Ryan, do you have a book or a series that comes to mind that
So
any of those options fit?
we've definitely talked about this before. My scope of how many books I've actually finished and read is very limited, but I've been on an Audible kick lately, so I'd have to go from that group of them. And as much as I absolutely love the book, because we talked about this before, and talking about it made me go read or listen to it, was the Revan book, Star Wars Old Republic, Revan. The fact that without giving too many spoilers away, he had made this trip once before, lost his way, came back, and decided to solo trip make it again on his own, thinking he would be okay. The second time around, with no help whatsoever, was like a huge, like, hang on, come on. Like, you had
I'm
your
glad you brought
bestie
that up.
with you the first time you went, and you guys both got messed up, and then you're going to go on your own the second time around. Like,
It's
why?
Darth Revan.
Yes, but again, love the book,
Oh
love
yeah,
the story, gave it 5 stars. It was amazing. But I had to stop and think about that when it got far enough in the book. I was like, wait, dude, really? Because multiple people offered to go with him. And I know they each had a reason why he turned them down to continue the journey with him. And they were all valid reasons. But it still like made me stop and think about it. But again, kind of like to echo what Alfred said there was like if I'm enjoying the book, I overlook that stuff. I keep going. That one made me pause, but it did not make me stop reading that book whatsoever.
I think
that's
that would
fair.
be a great topic for a future episode, maybe an episode this season, prequels. And that's those kinds of things are more glaring for me in prequels than they are in other books
Mm.
because obviously Revan couldn't have won and done what he did because we have the lore that we have in Star Wars.
Mhm.
But which I guess that would be a spoiler alert. Sorry. Uh,
That's okay.
but yeah, so that's just something I wanted to add to the.
Mhm.
What
Nathan.
about you, Nathan?
For me, it's been a long time since I've read them, but the Aragon books, and I'm going to ruffle some feathers with this one, but Christopher Paolini's Aragon series is utter garbage. It is one of the worst series ever ever created and wrote, and you could tell a 15-year-old wrote it because the inconsistencies from after book one, because book one was good. Book one was fun, main character going around, dragon, yay. After that, it just I don't even remember because I was not into it. And I don't know if it was because of plot holes or because of inconsistencies from book one going on. There were some dark moments in the first book. I remember that. Um, we'll just say headless people. Um, yeah, it's a couple dark moments, but I'm just like I'm trying to think of books that had plot holes that bothered me. I, plot holes don't bother me because in general, I don't know. I just I like to imagine like, okay, it's a plot hole, but maybe something else happened that we don't know about, and it's going to be rectified later. And so I'm kind of just one of those people, like, even if I'm kind of bored or I'm kind of just like, why is this going slow? I'm just kind of one of those hopeful people. It's like, maybe you'll get rectified later. And if it doesn't, then I've forgotten about it because it had no impact on me. And otherwise, plot holes that I remember is from things that I love, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars books, um, like you said with Revan, or even in Harry Potter with the Time Turners and Prisoner of Azkaban and things like that. I just don't care because I'm like, oh, boo hoo. Yes, they could have used the Time Turners to Harry could have done that to like reverse time to save Cedric Diggory, but you wouldn't have had a story. That was an inciting incident for Harry with Voldemort's return and him going forward, not just with Sirius and everything else in the Order of the Phoenix. So for me, I don't know. Plot holes.
I think that touches upon a good point, Nathan, where people characters are allowed to make bad decisions or do things
Yeah.
that don't make sense because it's a story. Like that's something I got to deal with a lot of the times when I'm watching like comedies or dramas where you're like, this could be solved if someone just said hello or spoke about it or talked, but then there'd be no story there. Like, obviously, that's maybe a very small plot hole or a loosely described plot hole. But the idea being like, all you need is a brief conversation and everything is cleared up, but the story wouldn't exist. And the whole point is you have people or characters making bad decisions that cause the story to continue.
And I think that goes into some of the tropes in certain things too, because like I watch a lot of romantic comedies, and like one of the biggest tropes is like there's drama, it gets resolved, everybody gets closer, and then there's a miscommunication. And that miscommunication between the two people that are supposed to be in love causes more drama much at the end of the movie where they have to resolve it again. But had they just talked it out, it would have been fine. But if they just talked it out, it wouldn't have been a movie. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yes. And
But now
I think
I'm on the edge of,
yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nathan, because I'm going to say something else afterwards.
No, 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 no. You go.
I was going to say, I'm on the edge of my seat. What was that plot hole you wanted to tell us about, Ryan? That you said you were going to save for later.
Are you ready for it? All right. So, me and the wife rewatched Game of Thrones, and I was going through the whole series. We get to like, I want to say season 6, and um, Viserion dies. The dragon falls into the lake, and the Night King drags it out of the lake. But to drag it out of the lake, he has these four like 500-foot long chains with links as big as the people that are pulling its head. And I know it's the army of the dead, but was he just carrying these four chains all over the expanse of the north? No clue what he was going to use them for, but just happens to be like, oh, that dragon's in the lake. Let's finally use those chains we've been hauling around just to pull him out. I'm glad I packed those in my sack. Like, where did they come
I,
from? There was
That's a good
nowhere
point.
for him to have these
I,
chains. No purpose, because it's a dead army. Like, where did they get these chains to drag the dragon out? But if they not had them, they wouldn't have the undead dragon. I get that.
Especially in the north.
But yes,
I'm, I'm the Night King. I walk around with magical chains I can summon anytime I so choose. You do not get to question my magical chain summoning. When the army of the dead seeks to take a dragon out of the lake, we summon said chains. Where we get them from, none of your business. Accept it, love it, understand it.
he's been
The
saving that one spell slot forever just for that
Yeah.
like a,
purpose.
a D&D campaign. The Night King has been waiting to use. You can use summon chains or you can use Army of the Dead. Which one will you so choose to summon at this
Summon
point?
chain.
Summon the chain!
I want
It
that
reminds me.
dragon.
It reminds me of Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon brings a bowling ball in his backpack, and everyone's like, "Why do you need a bowling ball?" And they end up going to a bowling alley, and he's like, "My brain is smarter than everybody." It's like, why were you carrying these chains? I knew it. I knew I would come across a dragon.
The-
I'm I'm wondering if he didn't get the chains from hard point, if he didn't get them from there.
Maybe, but again, even so, why did they have chains that were that big and heavy when they're living in like thatched
No.
together houses? They didn't have a boat. The boats came from Stannis's army,
Wow.
so they wouldn't have had a purpose for chains that large. Because I thought about this, I was like, oh, maybe he attacked a castle along the wall at some point, and he stole the chains from the gates that would lift up, but he hadn't at that point gone to the wall yet. So like,
Or not hard point, hard home, right?
yeah, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, there we go.
But I
It's
like I've racked my brain
Yeah.
on this ever since that episode. Like I thought, like, okay, where could he have gotten them? Like I get why he has them for the story to move on, but like just seeing the Army of the Dead drag it out, and I've watched this show like multiple times through, like 4 or 5 times, and this time through, I just stopped and I was just dumbfounded by the thought of like where did he get these four massive chains? Because like if you had one, I would even like okay, it's the Army of the Dead. If you're just using one chain to pull a fully grown dragon out, I can accept that plot hole. But you have four 500-foot chains because they stretched all the way up that mountain that they were pulling from. I watched the scene over and over again, and the chain links are like the size of their head.
the
Like
Edmund Fitzgerald Wade empty.
where?
It's
Yeah,
on par.
I mean they're
It's
like
on par
anchor
with like
chains.
Yes.
yeah, yeah, stuff like that. Like that's where would they have gotten that? And it's on par for me with finding Luke's lightsaber in Force Awakens, where she's just the most
Maz
the
Kanata.
Yeah.
yes, she just happened to stumble upon that lightsaber and
Yes,
has been
with his
holding it randomly
lightsaber.
for X amount of years. It's like those things. I can't. I never caught that. That's good, Ryan.
I, and like it's just
Where's the
one
Wookiee?
that really like stumped me. But again, like I kept watching. I didn't
Mhm.
get hung up on it, but it stuck with me for sure. But
And that
You
goes to
want to
show
know?
like you watched it several times over before you caught it. And
mm,
that's what I think I was getting at earlier is you have groups of people like us who love talking about this stuff, and you'll sit there and you'll talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and rewatch it to the point where you're like picking up on things. You're like, wait a minute, that
mm,
doesn't pass the sniff test. What's going on with that? And then you develop the plot hole from there, which it could be like Nathan said, it could be there is a reason for that that maybe in lore, maybe whatever the history of uh, King's.
Westeros.
Thank you, Westeros. Maybe it's a
yeah,
futuristic apocalypse of our world, and there was an anchor or a boat that they dug up. You know what I mean? There could be reasons that are in lore that we don't know, or it could just be that he's like, I need chains for this to happen, so chains are here, and Army of the Dead hand wave. But it's
maybe
those kinds of
before
things.
he became the Night King, he was a chain maker, and that was literally his profession. But
Look down. You're
I think
standing
they
in
do that.
your grave.
I think he was just one of the first men, just an average explorer kind of guy, based on because they
yeah,
changed him. He's the
yeah,
first person that Children of the Forest
All right.
changed.
If we're gonna talk about Game of Thrones plot holes, here's one. Here's one for you. The
Okay.
Night King, oh Lord Mighty Ice King himself, masterful raiser of the dead and magical powers that they never explained. That the children of the forest turned him into a freaking ice zombie with just a knife. And no big deal. Just shoved him against a tree and a knife. I could think of other scenes that could be used in. But so this Ice Night King, he's been around for how long? A long time. And dragons have been around for a long time, living or dead. Who's to say there's not some other dead dragon somewhere out in
yeah,
Westeros that he could have just gone and summoned if it was all about taking the wall down, or he could have just taken the army that he had and climbed the wall. If Jon and Tormund and all of them could climb it as men far weaker than any of the army of the dead or the Night King or the White Walkers, Why wouldn't they have just go earlier and the Night King could have just marched his happy butt right down the King's Landing and who would have been able to stop him?
Especially with all the castles that were unmanned.
Mhm.
100%.
Unmanned, you have all these people fighting different wars. Everybody's distracted. Nobody believes in the Grumpkins and Snots and monsters in the deep. So literally, the Night King could have just strolled down the King's Landing, murdered Cersei, murdered Jaime, murdered all of them, and he would have reigned the Iron Throne.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So I don't know. They're like
Look,
I said, plot holes.
yeah, yeah.
So
But yes,
we have this list. Do we want to highlight each of us some of them off of there? Like you pick one you think.
this let's just go.
Yeah,
Let's just
yeah,
go.
sounds good to me.
All right. First one, I mean, we'll skip. I don't know if you guys seen Citizen Kane, but I haven't.
I have,
So,
I
I
oh,
haven't.
you
have.
have? Do you want to talk
I
about
want
that
to,
one?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Let's hear it because it's billed as one of the cinematic masterpieces, and it's just probably too aristocratic for me to really grasp the beauty of it. But what's the plot hole?
So they say it's an oldie but a goodie with a catch to keep you on your toes. Hold on. I'm gonna skip ahead to the actual. Um, he whispers the name Rosebud the moment before he dies. This pushes the plot as people try to figure out who or what the name refers to. There's only one problem. Nobody was in the room to hear him say that. So how could they know what his last word was?
That's great.
That's the Citizen Kane plot hole.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's true. There's no one. There was no one there. He was by himself. He dies and he's holding a snow globe and it rolls and it cracks on the floor. Uh, I mean, I guess there could have been because it's a cinematographer's love child just because the way they film it, like you don't ever actually see one side of the bed, so there could have been some like a doctor standing there, uh, but it's just the way it's filmed as you're watching it, it's possible, it's believable that somebody was there because he's this infamous. It would be like if the Pope or the Queen or the King is in his bedchamber, no one's going to leave them 100% alone at any given time.
Hmm.
This person is billed to be this famous that someone's going to be by their bedside waiting to see what happens. So I could see, like, again, the way it's filmed, there could be somebody on the other side of the bed that you don't see that was there to witness it. But I like that. That's good.
Yeah, they do mention like the butler. There's a line in the movie that says the butler was in the room with him, but it's not really expanded upon or brought up outside of that one offline. So there's a chance he was in the room, but you think they would push that forward to fix the plot hole, I guess is the other part of it. Um, the next one is the Raiders
I got.
of. Go ahead.
I was going to do the next one
Yeah,
because
go ahead. Be my guest.
this is the one all three of us can laugh about.
Hmm.
The Eagles in Lord of the
Yep.
Rings, The Return of the King. It's talked about as this huge plot hole of it. They could have just taken the Eagles to Mordor and destroyed the ring. Uh-huh. Yeah, they could have, but only with Gandalf, because Gandalf was the only one who communicated with the Eagles, as far as I'm aware. Maybe I'm wrong, but I
They're
mean,
also sentient beings. They're not slaves. They're not dumb domesticated animals. They're actual intelligent beings that you couldn't just enslave to ride on. You'd have to willingly get them to agree to fly into enemy dangerous territory with you on their back.
the Eagles in Lord of the Rings lore, they're like one of the oldest species that live. They can live for thousands of years, and which is pretty cool when you think about eagles,
Yeah,
giant
Hmm.
eagles. Um, and like you said, they're sentient. It's kind of like the giant moths that Gandalf can whisper Elvish to, and then they just go. I think it's Elvish that he's speaking. Gandalf
I
speaks
think it.
Elvish. Yeah. So, um, but they say it's a plot hole. It's funny because Tolkien had this question from somebody that's like, "Excuse me, sir, why with the Eagles?" And Tolkien, in his nice Christian, wonderful professorly way, well, the Eagles were part of the story, and you wouldn't have had one, so that's the end of that. Next question. So it's like, I don't really care. I never even thought about that. Like, okay, it's a plot hole, sure, but
I also think it's the
how many
difference
times?
between taking a A-10 Warthog into enemy territory or sending a SEAL team into enemy territory. Like you're talking in your face attack or covert ops, and the ring with Frodo and Sam was covert, hidden, secret to try and prevent Sauron from knowing what was going on.
I mean, it'd be like trying to send in Fire Team Osiris or send in Master Chief. So which one are you gonna do? Like, well, I would take both personally because Fire Team Osiris is awesome, and so is Master Chief. But with Gandalf, how many times was Gandalf either off researching something
Mhm.
or getting caught by Saruman and getting sent up to the tower in Isengard, or trying to figure out stuff with Elrond, or then they get split up. So at that point, Gandalf has no clue where Frodo and Sam are. Could he have jumped on an eagle and gone and searched for them? Yes. But currently, Gandalf has to consider the fact that, okay, Theoden is in Rohan, and they're dealing with Helm's Deep in an army of Uruk-hai who are going there. You've got Saruman, who's literally creating endless orcs in Uruk-hai. You got the Eye of Sauron and Mordor, who's constantly trying to send either the Witch King of the Nazgul and the Ring Wraiths out, or he's trying to, like, Gandalf is split between all of these different people. They're like, well, what about Galadriel? Galadriel remains in the forest with her people. She doesn't involve herself. It was made clear that I hear Galadriel, I shall remain, and I will stay with my people. All right, very well. I feel you. I wouldn't want to get involved either. Screw that. Freaking dealing with Sauron. No thanks. But so that's the way I look at it. I'm like, is it a plot hole? Sure. Do I care about it? No, not in the slightest. And I don't even really
Nope.
think about it, quite honestly, because I am lost in this quest, this journey, this group of people that go and they all get split up. I mean, think about how many they start with. They start with 11 in the fellowship. And then by the time they even get to the forest with Hadir and Galadriel, they're short Gandalf, and that's one, their most powerful person. They're short now. Okay. Then after they leave Galadriel, then they lose Boromir, and then Aragorn and them are trying to fight Gimli, Legolas. They're all trying to protect Frodo and Sam. Meanwhile, Frodo's running away by himself. Sam goes after him. So now Frodo and Sam are off by themselves. And then Merry and Pippin get caught by the Uruk-hai. So now you're like all split. So, anyways, we'll move on to the next one. What's the next one, Ryan? You said Raiders.
Yeah, but just to touch on that, I think this is another, and we're going to hit this point over and over again. It's going to get redundant again. But the idea that if they took the Eagles and everything was smooth sailing, like what's the story? There's no story, there's no theme, there's no character development, and that's what we're here for with a movie and a book. But if they do take the Eagles and they go straight to Mordor, there's the Nazgul, there's the not the Night King, but
The
the
Witch King of the
the Witch
Nazgul.
King. Thank you. Um,
Great
like
The
crossover.
Witch. No, the Night King is actually now part of the
yeah,
of
right.
on the Ring Wraith. You got
But
the
like
Night King and the Witch King.
you would have this epic aerial battle, which is a completely different story. And who's to say the ring would survive that? If Frodo
Oh
falls
Yeah.
God,
from one of these eagles and then the ring is lost again, like that's another way, like it could have gone poorly. So maybe it's more of a risk to go that way as opposed to what Alfred said with it being more covert. So we're gonna hit
No.
that point a lot though. Like if you take some
Oh,
of
I'm
these
sure.
plot holes out, like there's no story whatsoever. There's no movie. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
even that, you said they're fighting airily, and the ring falls and they're in Mordor. What if the ring falls straight into the tower, right into Sauron's eye?
And revives him.
And now his corporeal form is back, and
Mm-hmm.
Sauron has the ring. And now what? You're gonna have to hope that you can resurrect all the Maiars, and hope that Eru has some sort of, um, yeah,
Yeah.
the yeah. Anyways, freaking
But yeah,
So
so
Ryan, what's the next one?
the next one is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's where Indiana Jones and Sala realize that the Nazis are digging in the wrong space. So the idea is if they would have just taken that headpiece and gone back to the Americans and told them, they would have avoided the Nazis finding the Ark, and then the Americans could have gotten involved and found it for themselves or stopped the Nazis or done anything differently as opposed to him seeking it out himself. And for me personally, I think that's that same thing. You don't have a story if you just end it there. But
And
any
it's
thoughts on that?
Indy. That's his character.
Hmm.
He is. I know where it is now. This is a amazing artifact that needs to be put in a museum or displayed for the world to see. So that wasn't within his character, I think, to just let it be.
Yep, absolutely. Nathan, any thoughts?
I was fine with the way the movie happened. Raiders is the best Indiana Jones movie besides The Last Crusade. So,
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, I mean, it, it wouldn't have made sense any other way, at least to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with any book in any movie. If you take this, well, why didn't they just do this? Because there wouldn't be a story.
Yep.
That's usually the answer. Um, or the authors or the creators just like, because I wanted to deal with it.
I wanted to
Right?
put them through this.
They must
Uh,
suffer.
you must have to feel your destiny. What is the well, that's another plot hole. Sidious giving three evil head turns to Anakin. You're gonna tell me he can't figure out that's Palpatine? Really? Anyways, just saying. What's the next one, Ryan?
Well, I know, I think Alfred mentioned this off the recording when we were first talking about this one, but the Big Bang Theory threw out the concept that if you take Indiana Jones out of the Raiders of the Lost Ark, it doesn't change the story whatsoever because the Nazis still find the Ark, the Nazis still take the Ark to that place, they still open it, and then they still kill themselves because of opening the Ark. So, I mean, that's another like plot hole that comes out of this movie with that situation. But again, it's not the same story. It's not Indy fighting to find his discovery that he's been tasked with. So you're taking the
Yeah,
story
it's kind of
away.
like it's a good versus evil, right
Hmm.
versus wrong story, and the and I mean I know not many stories do this anymore with like oh a cautionary tale or we have uh uh morals in the story, but the idea being like just let evil do what evil's going to do and eventually it'll destroy itself. That's great, but someone's got to stand up to them and try and stop them. I mean, no one knew exactly what would happen if they opened the ark. There was a reason they opened the ark, is because they
Yep.
thought they would have unlimited power. It just so happens they were wrong.
Yep. Um, so
100%.
the next one is the Shawshank Redemption. Um, the main character Andy is escaping from prison and he digs a tunnel slowly but surely over the course of like 20 years while he's in prison, maybe less than that. I don't know the actual years he was there, but he had a life sentence for a crime he didn't commit. He tunnels his way out, but he does it very slowly and he covers this tunnel with a poster the night he finally escapes and when he's trying to dig it the whole time. So when he escapes, they go into a cell, they try to see how he escaped, and they can't figure it out. The warden picks up a rock, throws it at the poster hanging on the wall, and the rock goes through the poster and then like tinks down the tunnel and drops. And the plot hole here that a lot of people argue about is how did the poster get put back in place from inside the tunnel with the tautness that it would allow it to break. Because if you've ever held a piece of paper and tried to throw something through it, it just becomes flimsy and you can't actually get that thing to penetrate the piece of paper. Thoughts?
Never seen Shawshank, so the comment section can go hog wild and destroy me on that. But
That's
yeah,
okay.
I got nothing.
I would think cinematography wise, like they wanted that type of reveal.
Hmm.
And for me, watch if I mean I haven't watched it either. I know enough about it to understand what happens, but I think if I saw that, it would have I would have glossed over it. Like it wouldn't have registered with me because that's
Hmm.
not the purpose of the scene. It wasn't like this is a paper or this is a physics movie where I have
Yeah.
to have. So I think it would have just I would have just glossed over it. But it's interesting when you look back and you're like, wait a minute, how would you have done that?
Yeah, but for you to say that it's cinematic, having not seen it, it was a very slow reveal of, oh my gosh, this is where he went out and this is how he escaped. And how did he accomplish this under our nose without anyone knowing? He dug this like 10-foot tunnel through the wall. So
See?
it was a
It's what
cinematic thing. So
it's the payoff outweighs what the loophole, the plot hole would be.
mhm. um, so there's one for time traveling Indiana
Oh,
Jones, The Dial of Destiny.
and
I haven't seen it, so if you guys want to
and
do that
before
one,
we
can go ahead.
bef- before we go on though, I have to recorrect. There's only 9 members in the fellowship, not 11.
That's all right.
So, apologies.
Comment
Nine.
Don't
sections
worry,
already lit us up and then have to retract their statements because you corrected it later.
plot hole.
But
Yes.
they immediately went to the comments and then later you correct yourself. They're like, oh, oops,
Dang
oops.
it.
We jumped the gun on that one.
Never seen Dial of Destiny.
I haven't yet either. I do want to watch it, but we'll skip that since I don't think any of us know
Okay.
that one. So the Karate Kid. Uh,
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
in
I
the
think I know where you're
tournament
going with
in
this
the
one.
original Karate Kid, um, there is a rule that you can't strike the face and earn a point. It's actually a penalty. And with Daniel's last move, he does the crane kick and hits Johnny in the face. And I know in the Cobra Kai show on Netflix, he actually touches on this plot hole in the show where he's like, well, the point shouldn't have counted anyways, like 20 years later, because that kick hit my face. So like they actually like do a throwback to the plot hole in the future show where they're both grown adults. But thoughts?
So I
You,
know, oh, sorry, I know Ryan,
no, no,
you're a
you
huge
go.
sports fan. Nathan, I know you enjoy sports as well, and I'm sure some of our
Hmm.
listeners enjoy sports. We all know the refs suck, so it just
Yep.
fits. Like it's too engaging. The crowd was like, "Oh man, this high school karate tournament is too great. I don't care what the rules are." And the refs are like, "Yeah, let them play."
For
That's my
me,
take.
for me, with the whole thing with Daniel doing the kick in the face, the way I look at it is just like, okay, face kicks are illegal, but he got kicked in the face.
hmm
So equal exchange. Sorry.
I I
Guess.
don't think you're wrong there because
Ooh.
he also got like illegally kicked from behind to injure him
Hmm.
so that
Oh,
he
they were playing
couldn't
dirty.
finish the match. So
Oh,
like even if he was given the point for a dirty kick, it was like all the cards were stacked against him to begin with all the tricks on the other side. So one versus like 10 bad things, like you can accept it.
doesn't he come in at Daniel too? Like he's going to attack when he goes to kick him. It's not like he's standing still when he
No,
kicks him,
yeah,
right? There,
he moves forward to strike, but the crane kick hits him before.
yeah. So I
So,
wonder too if it's like a judge, like I said with referees, a judgment call. Would he have kicked him in the face if he had come at him? Who knows?
mm.
But
Right.
but
So
yeah, that's an interesting one.
it's another one I overlooked when it happened and
Mhm.
didn't really care about because like it was such a cool concept at that time when you watch the movie. It was like the pivotal moment of the movie. But the fact that they do like talk about it in the Cobra Kai series where they kind of bring back the characters, I thought was an interesting thing to throw it back to that plot hole and acknowledge the plot hole and just make it part of the story going future.
I
So,
love that. That's
yeah.
that's another way that I can overlook plot holes if they're brought up
hmm
and acknowledged within the story, and for great reason. Like that develops animosity for what's his name? Uh, Daniel's rival. We mentioned him already. I can't remember
Johnny.
his name. Johnny.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Animosity for Johnny. Like I should have won. I was doing great. Yes, I hurt you. Oh well. But that was an illegal kick. I should have won. Like that's great character backstory and building right there. And that would be enough for me to be like, even if you brought up the plot hole, whatever.
Yep. Uh,
100%.
so
What's the next one, Ryan?
next one is Toy Story. Buzz Lightyear acts a little odd for a toy. So all the toys are supposed to go silent and still when kids come around, and sometimes Buzz does, and he follows suit. He talks to the Sid kid when he's captured by him. Like he acts a little erratic. He doesn't act like a normal toy. So the concept of do all these toys understand that concept from existence, or is Buzz Lightyear just built different? I guess is kind of the plot hole here, but it's just how the character acts different from other characters in the
That's
rules of the
interesting.
world.
To infinity and beyond, but really to plot holes and beyond. Um, I don't know about Toy Story because I don't really think of Buzz being his behavior being weird.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe in the new Buzz Lightyear, I never watched it because it wasn't Tim Allen. So for me,
It
I
is
old school Buzz Lightyear.
it is interesting where all of them because is it every Buzz or is it this specific Buzz Lightyear? Because you never really get multiple toys of the exact same in that universe,
Hmm.
except like the Army Men. Everybody else is a completely individual character, and you don't have the same toy in the same room, which is not realistic in and of itself because kids have multiple of the same toys all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do wonder now if it was just that Buzz Lightyear, because often Woody is like, "You are just a toy," and having to beat it into his head that he's just a toy.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, is it just Buzz, and that does kind of break the rules where every other toy from beginning to end is quote unquote trained to play dead when the human is around.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one.
And at times Buzz Lightyear does because he never talks to Andy, but then
Yeah,
sometimes he breaks those rules. So like I can see it, but this one's a little bit of a stretch for me. Like I
fair.
wouldn't have thought of this one myself, but I can
Yeah,
see where
Yeah,
they're coming from. We
yeah.
talked about
I just don't really. Yeah, I don't have much on that one. What about Die Hard with Hans Gruber and all the terrorists, and the power just mysteriously goes out?
mhm.
What do you guys think about that one?
when does it mysteriously go out? Jog my memory.
All right, so John McClane's in there. He gets and sees Holly, and he meets
Uh-huh.
Mr. Takagi. Meets Mr.
Yeah,
Takagi, I think it is,
Mhm.
I
and is
think
like,
so.
come join us for the party, have some drinks, blah blah blah. So Holly goes back down. Well, meanwhile, Hans and all his people are coming in and like BSing with the front clerk, being like, "Oh yeah, football game, football." But all right, and then they go in. Hans Gruber's like, "Tigers, go in there, Mister Takagi, Oz Ava, John McClane," and then the power goes out, and then all of a sudden, when the generators kick back on, Hans Gruber and them are in there shooting guns, and everybody like, "Silence, please, everybody over here," blah 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 blah. So
Hmm. I don't
But
remember that specifically, but I wonder if like that's the point. Like it didn't register with me
uh,
to be a plot hole when I watched it.
I think the
so
whole point of the power outage and the reason it was a plot hole mainly is it was supposed to be the police's response to do it. Like it was part of the police manual for this hostage situation is that eventually they would cut the power, and when the power is cut, it was supposed to open the final lock on the vault they're trying to break into while they're there because they're pretending to be terrorists, but they're really trying to break into the vault.
Mhm.
And I think the plot hole problem with this one is similar to the Eagles in Lord of the Rings is they could have just dispatched someone to cut the power at the right time, but they were stalling the police this whole time till they got to the point where they were expecting them to cut the power. So they were all hinging this plan on the power would get cut right when they needed that last lock to open, but they could have just done that on their own by just sending someone to cut the power at the right time and not had to deal with the risk factor of that.
True. I do think, like you said, though, it's story like that. It was a misdirection, and you can't have a misdirection and the genius of Hans Gruber if they just send somebody to cut the power.
Mhm.
And I think that would be a trail that Hans wouldn't want to be left. Like you want it to be believed to be a terrorist attack. You want it to be believed that it was they died in a blaze of glory or something, and not expect them to be bank robbers or robbers of some sense. So if the power was cut, all of a sudden they would try and follow Hans and his group afterwards. Like, oh, they weren't a terrorist organization because someone cut the power. Them cutting the power, it's kind of like we're talking about here. Like, did you put two and two together, or was it a disconnect because you cut the power? You wouldn't assume that the uh, villain knew about that. You know what I mean? It's for me, it was a yep, that makes sense because it's a story.
And and can I point this out?
Hmm.
Die Hard 1, they're breaking into a vault. Fallout, Lucy McLean is from a vault. John McClane's daughter is Lucy McLean.
You might be
Just
on to
saying.
something.
Just I'm
New
just saying.
new fan theory unlocked.
Any of you people in the comments, let us know what you think. Lucy McLean, Fallout. Lucy McLean, Die Hard. Vault. Vault.
Um,
Plot hole.
Well done.
we could do like one or two more maybe.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
fine.
Hit it.
um, so we've got Luke is hidden in plain sight in the Star Wars
And
saga.
we've done too many Star Wars ones
Okay.
already. Let's
All right.
let's move on
Yeah.
to a different one.
Back to the Future. Marty
Oh, okay.
McFly goes back
Back
and
to the future, Marty.
meets his parents, gets them to stay together, and then goes back to the present where he's not recognized as being the same person that they met 20 years ago. I think it was 20, 50, 30 years ago, the 50s to the 80s. Yep. So 30 years ago.
Eh, that's not a plot hole. I don't feel like it is really because uh, I mean we change. Okay, sure. Like maybe he resembled like a great grandfather or like a relative in some way, shape, or form. But your child, you're not going to think that at that point when Marty went back.
Mhm.
Like you go back to the future, you're just their son. Like it's they're not gonna like okay, they think back and they're just like, oh my gosh, that was you. Like we don't understand how time travel actually works.
Mhm.
So maybe that was kind of like a Jumanji effect, right? In a
Absolutely. Could
similar
be.
sense.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Is it a plot hole? Maybe. Do I
I
care?
think
No.
I think comedies can get away with a lot more.
Mhm.
Uh, And for me, I'm with Nathan here. I didn't grasp it as a plot hole. Like again, thinking about it outside of watching the movie, yeah, that kind of makes sense. They should recognize someone, but like you said, Nathan, it's so much time has passed. You're not going to associate a stranger you met for 5 days and may not remember, even though it was a very important moment in your life. You may forget the weirdo that you didn't really know in favor of, oh, this is my kid now. Like those, I think again would be so disjointed in your mind, you wouldn't put
I
two
mean,
and two together.
how many times do you meet somebody that slightly maybe resembles like I served with somebody in the military that literally we were twins. I mean,
Yeah,
I crap you not. Like we could have passed as identical twins. And so who's to say that they couldn't have ran into somebody that similarly resembled Marty? So, and it was
oh
back.
yeah,
It's all the thing like with Grant Gustin's like Barry Allen going back in time to save his mother, but he doesn't save his mother. And then he goes back and then he comes back again and he does and Flashpoint and blah, blah, blah. But it's the whole thing of like, oh, my sweet, sweet boy. How do you know that's your kid? Your kid is a little boy right now, and you're gonna tell me you look like my father. Okay, he resembles your father. But again, that stuff to me doesn't make I don't think about that stuff. And I think old school sci-fi's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Farscape, Star Wars, Star Trek, you name the list goes on. I think that genre got away with a lot more plot holes with people just
being along for the
you just
ride.
don't think about it as much in sci-fi. Like they were able to get away with it because they knew they could, right?
Mhm.
And now later, 30 years after the fact, people are now questioning these because by this time, people have either watched it once, twice, rewatched it. It's like Steins Gate and anime. The first time through, it is an anime. It doesn't make sense though. You watch it again and everything makes sense. And that's kind of how it is when you watch other stuff. You watch movie once and you're like, oh, that's cool. But then you go back and watch it again. You're like, oh, I didn't catch that. And you just Easter egg subtly, you pick up on it over and over and over again. And then you start picking things apart. It's like when we're writing our books, the more you go back through it, the more you start nitpicking, and the more you're like, I'm not going to publish this because blah, 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 blah. And then you get into the whole that cycle of being George Martin and never publishing a book. So for 13 years. Um,
What about you, Ryan? How do you feel about that one?
I
Sorry for the ramble.
No,
No, you're
you're
good.
good. I've always wondered this one. I question it. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. I will watch the movies like multiple times, all three of them, multiple times a year. But I do get stopped on this one. But after listening to you guys kind of talk about it, he was only there for like less than a week. So you've known this guy for 7 days, and then it's 30 years later that your kid resembles him. So I could see, yeah, okay, you kind of remind me of him, but I can't say that you are him. But they do name him after himself, even though
Yes.
he doesn't
That's
go by that name when he's back there, because he goes by Calvin at first, and then he says the name Marty or something like that, and they're like, oh, that's a good name. But he had already been named Marty. So you have that whole time paradox where they named him, but then he went back in time and gave himself the same name. So,
Yeah.
but
it's like,
is it one I can get over? Absolutely. I love the movie, but
yeah, it's like Ant-Man and Endgame. Time travel is BS. Yeah, it is. Makes no sense. Every time travel scenario you've ever watched, the rules always get broken in some way, shape, or form to where, well, I don't understand if this blah blah like it's time travel, so it's never really going to be done perfectly, in my opinion. It's a really hard concept to nail down. Even Doctor Who has issues with it here and there. So anytime you're dealing with something as complex and intricate as time travel, you're always going to have people that are going to pick something apart about it. And then when you get into multiversal theory and things like that, then you're really just going to have people like, well, I mean, I don't understand. Like more than one Earth, like is each universe, are the planets the same names, or are they the same planet with the same histories, or does each universe have different named planets, but some of them share the same history as the other ones, but different dimensions or different times? And then do they have time travel that invests with the is actually time travel, or is it when they're planning a dimension, or when you go into a different like? And then you just start going down that rabbit hole. And I don't,
and I think
um,
that's a genre that is very susceptible to plot holes. Is anything that uses time travel or multiple universes, you're setting yourself up for both plot holes, but also you can explain them away just by the presence of multiverse theory. Like, oh, yes, this character died, but hey, there's another multiverse I pulled them
multiverse.
from. Boom. It's solved. So like you open yourself up to it, but you also have the fix built into those themed genres there.
It's the easiest way for lazy writing.
It,
You got a
you're not
problem?
wrong.
No problem. Shoot him in the face. Guess what? Yank one from universe 450. They're there. I had to skip 100 universes, but the other I pulled them over here. Same character, different life. Now they live a new one.
Although honorable mention to the movie The One with Jet Li, where
I love Jet Li.
as one dies in
Great.
the other multiverses, they each get stronger. And the concept of the movie is there's only two left, and he wants to kill the other one to become the strongest being in the world because he'd be the last copy of himself in all the multiverses. Um,
Great.
Ooh,
but that I
that
just love that movie.
that's like almost like a little bit of Highlander and
Mhm.
Tournament of Power from DB Zoo Super
Hmm.
together. It's like,
Great movie.
Highlanders, the whole there can only be one, and Dragon Ball Super, they're each of the planets are slowly they lose in the tournament and they're pan. Poof.
I got one that Ryan will probably really appreciate, and Nathan, you too. Uh, Ash's Pikachu.
Yeah.
Oh,
His strength,
major
his
plot hole,
power. Yep.
huge plot hole, or the fact Ash dies and all the Pokemon are
Ryan, bring it back.
like, come on, man, like really? What kind of BS utter nonsense is this? Pikachu's been training for how long at this point in time? But oh no, super powerful alien Mewtwo. Haven't seen that one before. Another Team Rocket scenario. But you know
Yeah.
what? It's okay because it's Pokemon and we all love it. So
But
we
but
we
you're
get it.
right. Like Pikachu will literally he's gone through an entire season on this one place, and the same Pikachu travels with Ash to a new location and loses to X's Butterfree in the first episode, and you're like, wait, what?
Oh,
He just like he got so strong, and now he's losing to this weak Pokemon from the first route. What are you talking about? Like, how did
this
he
would be like
retract so far?
if like God level Gear 5 Luffy somehow, goes back against God Eneru from Skypiea, but oh no, it's God Eneru. He's so scary. I can't beat him. Bro, you just trained for 900 episodes. You're like God form now. But oh no, Eneru had a power up too. Guess what? He can channel different colors of lightning now. So something with the ozone atmospherical scientific mojo B time travel multi-plugged another Eneru from some other planet. Guess what? You lose. Doesn't matter about the 950 friggin' episodes you just
Yeah,
nope. It
exactly.
happens. Live with it. Plot hole. It's all right.
All right,
Yep.
Um.
I got two left, but whenever you
Okay.
guys are ready for, let me know.
Go
All
I'm
right.
for it.
ready.
We'll end on the one I think is the biggest plot hole in the history of movies. So the next one for
Okay.
me
That'd
on
be
this
Captain
list
America.
that we've talked, no, I don't think so, but that's the
Well,
one I'm
all
going to
right.
go to. So Captain America staying back in time, reliving a different life with um oh
Peggy
why
Carter.
thank you. Um reliving a life with Agent Carter and then coming back to pass on
Mm-mm.
the shield
He's a cheater.
to
He
Bucky
cheated.
or not Bucky to Falcon.
Mhm.
That is one of the biggest plot holes in the Marvel universe, and a
Hmm.
lot of people were upset by that. I get where they're coming from because in the original comic books, there was always supposed to be the shield passing down, and he always had the unlived life with Agent Carter that he wanted to have. And I get where they were trying to go with that, but that's one where like I can't overlook. It didn't ruin the movie for me, but it's one that stuck with me and hurts a little.
It
Other
made no
things,
sense.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Other things, like I do not like Endgame compared to the other Marvel movies. I think it's better than Ultron, but that is one that stands out for me, and I'm just like, no. My sister
Mm.
actually, she's a huge Bucky fan, loves Captain America, and she was like, the whole purpose of Captain America from the very beginning was yelling at Tony Stark, "You won't be the one to take the grenade." And he's the one who would take the grenade. He's the one who would be the martyr in a sense. And he just says, "Yeah, you know what? My all of my feelings and my morals and stuff mean nothing. I'm just gonna undo and break the rules of time travel in the universe that they built." So I know other people really enjoyed that movie, but it didn't ruin that specific scene didn't ruin the movie for me, but it did give me some messy feelings about.
I'm gonna do my perfect, my the best Iron Man impression that I can do with my perfect smirky face. Everything special about you came out of a box.
Take away the suit.
Oh
What are
yeah,
you?
or brave. Put on the suit.
Billionaire playboy.
Billionaire
Yes.
playboy.
Philanthropist.
Philanthropist. Scarlet or Black Widow.
Yeah.
He's
He's
got
not
a
wrong.
point. Put on the suit. Let's go a couple rounds.
So,
Yeah, put on the
do we need a
suit.
drum
Okay.
roll for the final one?
I don't know.
Hey, I
Go
didn't even
ahead.
get this.
Go ahead.
Blah, blah. So I agree with both of you. I think the whole Captain America thing, Endgame was mostly fan service. I enjoyed it. I had found the Nebula thing to be a complete and utter. Uh, if you're doing time travel, it's time travel. If you're doing multiversal theory, it's multiversal theory. If you're going to use the quantum realm and say that it works with both time quantum mechanics and multiversal theory, then just anyways. So Cap, if you're going to send him back, he stays back and he dies and he lives his life with Peggy. You don't see him again.
Hmm.
Otherwise, he stays and he has to live with the knowing that he could have gone back. It's like Barry knowing he could go back in time but doesn't. The same thing for Cap. knowing he had the opportunity. Like, we're going back to put the stones back where they belong. Give him that moment to see Peggy, maybe one last kiss, and then they go back because that's the right thing to do. Um, so, anyways, yeah, it's whatever. Next one, last one.
Titanic.
The door.
The door. Everyone's biggest thing from the moment that movie came out to even people who watch it now consistently go back to they both could have fit on the door. There have been people who have done scientific experiments with the temperature of water, the size of the door, and the weight of two people that the door would have still floated, and they both could have fit on the door without being submerged in the water because people have been so upset about this plot hole. But that he chooses to sit off the door and slowly fade into death instead of them both being on the door and living.
I
Thoughts?
think I could be misremembering, but I think in the movie, regardless of real science, I think he does try to get on the door, but it starts to sink.
You could. It might be.
But
Yeah,
like I said, it's enough where people are like, why didn't he try? So it may have been like a subtle thing, but I thought I remember like a moment where they're both trying to get on, and he's like, no, you stay on it because it starts to go down or something. Uh, but that it's still a plot hole in the sense that science disproves the fact that it wouldn't have gone down. They both could have fit on it. Uh, but also, again, you don't have the tragic love story that they want.
I'm I think Z and I are gonna have to use this door scenario in Titanic and be one door that is perfect
Titanic.
shape and size that everybody could literally get through it. But this door is going to be locked from both sides, and there's no way for anybody to get through it. And just on the door, it'll say J, and then whatever the chick's name was.
Rose,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's going to say JR, and it'll be engraved into the door, and they're trying to push through it, but all they hear from the other side is, and then they all die. So just a little
Titanic.
funny on this. Titanic, where everybody dies.
I love
Um,
it. What about you, Ryan? You said
I
it's the biggest one.
it's one like I think is one of the silliest argued ones. I think it's biggest because it's talked about more than any other plot hole in over the span of like my lifetime. I know recently like the Captain American one has become huge in the last like 5 years because of it's being so recent and so many people got into superhero movies that it had a lot of eyes on it. But this one has been debated so much and like people going out of their way to prove that it was possible. And again, I agree with you. It goes to most of these plot holes that people have these nitpicky opinions on are if you take it away, you take away from the story. The story is that she survived and her lover didn't. It was a story of two people from two different
well,
situations and whatever you want to take away from that theme, but that the lower class was not meant to survive that scenario, and therefore
yep.
she had to be the one to survive and remember it and to go on and live a life. So you take that
Well,
away if you allow it to happen.
we
Mhm.
know she would have survived if it was Captain Jack Sparrow. I'm just saying.
You're
She
not
was with
wrong.
she was with the wrong Jack.
You're not
Wrong
right.
Jack. You need
The,
somebody to save you on the waters. You need Captain Jack Sparrow.
he would have
Um,
survived with her.
he would have,
Or
because
by
Captain
himself.
Jack, it's Captain Jack, man. Like, he would have like drowned, but then like the Davy Jones's ship would have raised, or like Barbosa or somebody else would have
They
shown up and
they
like,
both would have been on
I
they both would have been on the door and he would have fashioned a sail out of the hair from his back.
he would have
There
though.
you go.
He'd be like, "Oh, that'd be the last time you thought you can't happen, Jack
We could do
Sparrow."
we could do a Pirates of the Caribbean episode just
Oh, we
because.
will, I'm sure.
Oh, we
All those
will.
trilogies
Absolutely.
and there's a new one
Yeah,
coming out that he's coming back, so I definitely think
yeah, I
Can't
want to see
wait.
that
I
one.
wouldn't have
yep,
watched it if he didn't come back. So
yep.
can't have Pirates without Captain Jack, without Johnny Depp. It is. Yeah.
Yep.
The Let us know what you think in the comment section below about our plot holes episode. Did you
Please.
feel like you were drowning in one giant hole, a black hole of plots? Perhaps a plot hole of, yeah, anyway. So let us know what you think is the biggest plot hole in cinematic history or in literature that you've experienced maybe yourself that you could have overlooked, etc., etc. And
And go read our books and find our plot holes for us.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
they don't exist. Just kidding.
Yes,
Don't tell them
I'm
they
please,
they still buy our book.
interact with us on our social medias. Check out our work if you like to read. Um, Hit us up on our socials to talk and chat if there's something you want to ask us specifically, our favorite movies or whatever, or why we decided to do this podcast.
Mhm.
Talk with us. We're friendly people. We like to engage, and definitely leave some comments below because we'll interact.
no, they're friendly. I'm just kidding. I am too. But also let us know if you have any ideas of content that you would like us to do for an episode, something that is a burning desire of a movie or a, I don't know why I always do that with my eyebrows. The like a movie or a book, or why is this hummingbird next to my hood? Um, Bloopers. So yeah, you know to do the thing. We're live and raw as all raw and wriggly, just like the fossils. So yeah, leave the comments, do the stuff, like it, share it, find all your friends, hunt everybody down, and share the War of Nerds. Hoist your banners high and look down, look down. War of Nerds is in your face. We'll see y'all next time.